protocols. Override. Backdoor.
What's up, Exiles? Paycheck here. For this video, I'm going to be going over the Endgame Breach Overseer combo, which is a very profitable endgame juicing strategy. It combines the raw currency drops that you get from juicing the Breach mechanic with the high tier loot drops that you get from juicing boss mechanics or the Overseer tablets. So you get a lot of currency, you get a lot of high tier drops, ends up being pretty dang profitable because of that. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So let's go ahead and get into it. First, we're going to take a look at the maps that we want. So on your maps, you're going to want quantity and rarity as much as possible. And then you're also going to want one more mod that's going to add some kind of pack size to your map. So increased pack size or increased number of rare monsters, anything like that. So ideally you want a combination of both, but make sure you have quantity and rarity on your maps because that's by far the most important. The higher quantity and the higher rarity you can get, the better. Now, I have a few maps here that I just randomly pulled out of my stash. These ones aren't necessarily ideal. They're just some random ones that I had. Okay, so I'm going to be using these as an example, but make sure quantity and rarity, you have them. And then second to that, you're going to be looking for as much pack size or number of rare monsters as you can get. Okay. Once you actually have those maps, you are going to augment them if they're needed, right? So if they're just a magic map with one mod on them, then go ahead and augment them. After that, if needed, you are going to add a regal orb to turn them into a rare. And then finally, you are going to fully exalt all of your maps, okay, until they cannot be exalted anymore. And we want as many mods per map as we can possibly get. For the exact reason why, we'll go over that once we get to our Atlas passives. But just make sure you exalt everything up to full because the more mods, the better for us. All right. So after we have everything exalted up to full, we have our fully modded maps. The next step is going to be to apply our delirium oils or distilled emotions, whatever you want to call them. There's two options here. The cheaper one is going to be distilled guilt. Each one adds 8% increased pack size for a total of 24 if you use all three. Distilled guilt works good if you're primarily just focusing on the actual breach portion of this and not really going for overseer tablets, because the increased pack size does not affect the overseer tablets in any way, really. So distilled guilts work great for breach, but if you do want to boost up your boss drops as well as the breach at the same time, I would recommend going with distilled greeds, which is 8% rarity per distilled greed or 24% overall. And that's going to boost your drops from both the breaches and the bosses. So this is what I would recommend. Little bit more expensive, but not very much. I would say that it's well worth it. So that's where we're going to put on all of our maps right here. So let's go ahead and add all of our distilled greeds. Okay, so now we have our mods. They're fully modded. They have quantity and rarity as much as we can get on them. They have some pack size on them. And now they have the distilled emotions on them. The final step of this is kind of optional. You can just run all your maps as is, and that works totally fine. In fact, that's usually what I'm doing right now. But if you wanted to try to take things a little step further and really min max the heck out of the strategy, but gamble a little bit on it at the same time, is to vol orb them. So when you vol orb them, there's a couple things that can happen. One, it could completely brick your map. It could remove all your quantity and rarity. It could level it down a tier. So now it's only a tier 14 instead of a tier 15. So lower item level drops, which we don't really want. Um, But the beneficial things that I could do is upgrade it to tier 16, which will give you access to higher item level drops. Or it can add some more mods. So, like I said, the more mods we can get on our maps, the better. And then the final thing is that it can convert all of the suffix mods, which are non beneficial mods for us. It can convert all of those suffix mods into prefix mods, which is very helpful because that could add more rarity or more pack size or something like that. So that's the final option. Not really mandatory, but if you really wanted to try to min max and gamble a little bit, go for it. So that's how we roll our maps. And now let's go ahead and take a look at the tablets that we're going to use for this strategy. There's going to be two different types of tablets that we're using for this strategy. And as I've already said, they are Breach and Overseer tablets. The mods that we're looking for on our breach tablets first is going to be anything that either adds monster density to our maps or potentially adds to the number of breaches in our maps. So for a number of breaches, like this one says chance to contain 3 additional breaches. For density, this one says breaches have increased magic monsters. So that's the first mod we're looking for. Second to that is going to be anything that either further adds mob density or adds rarity or quantity to our maps. So like this one has rarity, this one here has quantity, and then this one here has increased rare monsters in our maps for more density. So that's what we're looking for on the breach tablets. For the overseer tablets, the first thing we're looking for is anything that's going to add rarity or ideally quantity to our map bosses. So this one has rarity of items dropped by map bosses, and this one has quantity of items dropped by map bosses. The second mod, just like the breach tablets, we're going to be looking for either increased density again, so like this one, rare monsters, this one, overall pack size, or anything that adds further rarity and quantity to the maps. Okay, so all of it for all of our tablets, it's just pack size, rarity, quantity, or additional breaches. And that's pretty much the whole idea. All right. Now, as far as how we're going to be using these tablets, since we get to use 3 per tower, it's kind of up to you guys. The showcase that I was showing at the beginning for all the boss drops, that was actually only with 1 overseer tablet and 2 breach tablets. That's typically what I'm running. So I'm focusing a little bit more on the breaches and just adding in a little bit of the overseer for some boss drops, but that's mainly because I just really enjoy the breach mechanic and I like fighting through tons of mobs. But if you guys want to focus more on boss drops, you can absolutely run 2 overseer tablets and 1 breach tablet. Or you could even go all in and run all overseer tablets and just really try to shoot those high tier drops to the moon from the boss. Or if you're not really getting anything good from your, tiered loot and you're just like, all right, I'm kind of over that RNG and I just want to farm raw currency, then you can go with 3 breach tablets and that works totally fine. So it's kind of up to you guys. You can mix and match however you want. But again, I've been doing 1 overseer and 2 breach, and that's what I enjoy most. But every once in a while, I do go 2 overseer, 1 breach. But it's up to you guys. So that does it for our tablets that we're using for the strategy. Now let's go ahead and look at our Atlas passives. Starting at the top with our boss Atlas nodes, we first go over to the right to Spoils of War for increased quantity of items dropped by map bosses. This pairs very well with the tablets that we're running. Up from there, I spec into Directed Worship for shrines. If you prefer, you can spec into Old Pirate's Trick for strong boxes in your maps instead of shrines. I like shrines, and I'll explain why in a few seconds, but either of those two works. And then up from there, the final node that we take is Beyond Reality. This is for a chance to have corruption in our maps, which corruption lets your map spawn beyond mobs, which as we're killing all the mobs in our juiced up breaches, those mobs can then spawn even more mobs, which drop even more loot. So that's why we take that. Moving down to our overall Atlas tree, the two most important nodes on here is this keystone, Unstable Energies, and then this notable down here, Grueling Journey. So Grueling Journey, this is why earlier I said you want to exalt your maps up to the maximum. and get as many mods on your maps as we can, because this node basically says the more mods you have on your maps or waystones, the more effect they have. So as an example, if you have a waystone with 100% increased rarity on it with this notable, and it's a 6 modded map, well, now every single one of your mods has 12% increased effect. So instead of 100% rarity, it's now 112% rarity. And we scale that even further with the unstable energies keystone, which says 25% more effective prefix mods or suffix mods. If this hits the prefix mods for more effect, then now that 112% rarity we had gets scaled even further. So that's one of the main ways that we're scaling all of those beneficial mods in the maps or waystones that we're running. Other than that, I put a big emphasis on getting as much pack size and number of packs as I possibly can, just for as much density as we can get. I spec down here into the shrine nodes, and the reason why is primarily because of this node right here, Prayer for Guidance. So this gives us an increased chance of finding seeking shrines, and seeking shrines grant increased rarity. By default, a seeking shrine gives you 30 seconds of 100% increased rarity, which is already pretty decent. But with all the shrine nodes that give you increased effect and increased duration of shrines, you then get a full minute of increased rarity. And instead of 100% rarity, you gain 250% increased rarity. So if you have a pretty quick build, a full minute of 250% increased rarity can go a very long way. If you guys don't particularly have a very fast build, or if you just prefer strong boxes in general, feel free to swap these nodes over. That's a very easy respec to just get into the strong box nodes, and that is plenty profitable. It works very well. I know a lot of people are doing that. So feel free, swap the shrines into strong boxes if you'd like. The last thing on here is specking up past the number of monster pack nodes and into the tablet effect nodes, as well as the remnants of power notable, which gives us a chance for double the effect of our tablets. So those nice tablets that we're running that give us, a lot of density and a lot of quantity, a lot of rarity. This is just going to upgrade them essentially to have even more effect and be even more beneficial for us. Now, beyond that, once we take a look at our league specific trees for Breach, we spec into the Rising Pyre first for the increased monster density, into the Crumbling Walls for a chance to gain additional breaches. And then the last node on here that I use is Interdimensional Assault for the increased monster density. But this is only if your build can actually handle it, if you're pretty quick and pretty strong, because this does make your breaches close faster. If your build is a little bit slower, you can't quite handle it yet, feel free spec out of those and instead into Grasping Hands for some additional magic monsters. Still works great. Kind of depends on your build though. So if you can handle it, go Interdimensional Assault. If not, go Grasping Hands, and that works just fine. Very last thing on here, for Delirium, you only need 2 points, and the only node that we need is the mirrors, which gives us increased fracturing mirrors, which those are the mirrors that actually spawn the Delirium mobs. So just adds a little bit more mob density to our maps. But that covers it for our Atlas tree. Well, that does it for this strategy. Down below in the description, I will have trade search links for you that bring you directly to the maps and the tablets that you want to run with this strategy. By default, I left the values empty. So if you want to put in your minimum thresholds, like, no less than 20% quantity or anything like that, feel free to add those in. But by default, I left them empty. One last thing that I wanted to point out is that all the testing that I did with this strategy, including the showcase footage at the beginning of this video, it was all done on a character with only 58% rarity. So the potential profit from this is significantly higher than what I'm just showing here because, yeah, I'm not running very much rarity. So if you have a character with more rarity than I do, or if you're running in a group setting and you have like a MF rarity bot following you around or anything like that, then the potential is very high with this kind of a setup. So that does it for me here. Hopefully you guys get as much enjoyment out of this strategy as I have. And other than that, good luck out there, exiles. I'll see you guys next time.